Hi, I'm Paul Battaglia, and this is section 10.2, Introduction to Conics, Parabolas. In section 10.2, we'll have students look at conics for the first time. So I'm joined by Gabe and Brittany, and I think, Gabe, that's where we have to start with students, is what is a conic? So go ahead.
Sure. So when we're talking about conics, there's a lot to discuss. So I like to just do a quick activity with my students where they maybe explore some of these conics, at least maybe see what they look like before we talk about them at any sort of length.
Okay.
So there's plenty of resources available online, for instance, applets that students can use, where they're given a double napped cone and they can actually place planes on the cone and see where these two intersect. So before we even have any sort of conversation about conics, they're seeing this idea of the circles, parabolas, lines, ellipses, and hyperbolas.
So the visual approach really helps them just to kind of set the scene. I like that. Brittany, talk to us a little bit about the approach that we're taking as we start to instruct them now.
So the first thing I tell my students is now we're not taking an algebraic approach anymore. So before, when we were talking about parabolas, we were just talking about them as graphs of a quadratic equation. And now we want to do the geometric approach. So how do we form these if we're not given, the equation already?
Right. And I think, that being said, I think one of the ways I like to do this with my students is to actually show them a quick little paper folding activity, really simple. What you need here is some basic materials. You don't have to use colored paper, but I think it actually helps for students to see what we want them to see. Some kind of see-through paper, maybe either wax paper or parchment paper. And again, you can even cut some of this into smaller sizes so that the students can work with it a little bit easier at their desk. And then really just some type of a marker, Sharpie or something of that nature. So what we're going to do here is we're going to start off nice and simple by just drawing a line right on our paper. And when we do that, the only other thing we need to draw is a point. The distance between the point and the line is up to the student. Now, what we're really doing is we're drawing what will wind up being the directrix and the focus of this parabola. And then simply what we're going to do from here is we're just going to fold. How do we fold? We instruct the students to fold so that when they fold this line, the directrix, it always passes through the point, which is the focus. And so we kind of let them do this as many times as possible. So I'll just show you what we would do. As many orientations as you can. So we'll just kind of overlay that line onto the point, fold the crease nice so you can really see it and define it. You can keep going back and forth. I like to keep alternating sides so that I don't wind up doing the same crease over and over. Just pick a different part of the line, fold it onto the point. And this process would continue. And so what will happen now is the more and more creases your students can create, they'll actually begin to see the definition of a parabola. And the great thing about it is you can orient this way or this way, however you like, and you'll start to see how the curve plays into the lines intersecting. So what we have here is a nice finished result. And this is kind of one that we just kind of put together real quick. And the great thing about this is if you have 20 students, you could have 20 different parabolas because the point and the lines are probably not the same distance from each other. So where do we go from here? So now we've taken this geometric approach. We've given them really nice visual models to help them understand what a parabola really is. We really do need to get into the equations of the whole thing. So Gabe, take us from here.
Sure. So after we do take this geometric approach to studying parabolas, students in the back of their minds have to be thinking, well, I want to write some sort of equation down. And really, a lot of them have seen these equations back in chapter 2, just in slightly different forms, maybe. So when I introduce the two equations, I really like to point out the similarities and the differences between what we saw in chapter 2. So we still have one of our variables is squared. It's just in chapter 2, we only had perhaps x squared. So we know those open either upwards or downwards, depending on whether or not the leading coefficient is positive or negative. Well, here, the big difference is now we can have a y squared. So something of the form, what would it be? Y minus k squared equals 4p times x minus h. So in this case, well, students aren't used to seeing y squareds. And I really just point out here, well, what we're looking at is now our parabolas can open to the right if p is positive or to the left if p is negative.
And I think now, as we talk about this, it's really important that students catch this new orientation. I hope these tips have been helpful for you and that you find much success in section 10.2.